Hi everyone, it's Dr. Melanie McNally with Destination U, and today I want to talk about going back to school in the fall, specifically pertaining to those of you who may be dealing with social anxiety. So one of the things I noticed at the start of the pandemic is a lot of kids with social anxiety, actually a lot of adults too, felt this tremendous sense of relief. All of a sudden, they didn't have to worry anymore about social interactions, social pressures, having to talk in front of groups or raise their hand in class. And there was such a sense of relief that they loved the pandemic. And they loved having to stay home and do remote learning. And now that you are thinking about going back to school, now that there's lots of conversation about it, you may find that some of that social anxiety is starting to spike up again. I'm going to do a separate video on for those people who are dealing with anxiety that's more specific to getting COVID-19. So this is just more about social anxiety. So if you notice that, your district maybe has already put a plan in place as to what the new school year is going to look like, or maybe your parents are trying to decide whether or not they're going to send you back to school, or maybe things are still completely up in the air for you, but everyone's talking about school and you are starting to feel really anxious. You notice that you're starting to have nightmares. Maybe you're grinding your teeth or clenching your jaw a lot. Maybe you have some stomach issues, some headaches. You're not sleeping well. You're more irritable than usual. Every time you think about school, you're feeling all kinds of dread about who you're going to see or about having to interact with people. So if that's you, if you're experiencing a spike in some social anxiety type symptoms, what I want you to do is start to think about how you want to be in the new school year. So let's say you know that you're going back to school and maybe your district is doing kind of like a combined remote in-person sort of a schedule. First of all, get as many details about the new schedule ahead of time as possible so you know what days you'll be at school, what days you'll be remote, and then start doing some mental rehearsal for the days that you'll be in person. I've mentioned this before, but our brain does not know the difference between real and imagined. So every time you practice imagining walking down the hall or you imagine yourself speaking up in class, to your brain, it's as though you're really doing it. So you're getting some exposure to that feared situation, which will make it a little less anxiety provoking when you're actually in the situation itself. So mental rehearsal is huge. If you are really anxious, just making eye contact with people, finding a spot to sit on the bus or walking down the hall, or maybe for you, you're anxious having to speak up in class or having to give a speech, whatever it is for you, start to imagine yourself doing those types of situations, but imagine yourself doing it as the version of you that you want to be. So if you want to be really calm and confident and secure as you're walking down the hall, imagine yourself walking down the hall, making eye contact with people, kind of just casually smiling as you walk down, waving, saying hello. No big deal, no worries in the world. Imagine yourself doing that. Or imagine yourself sitting in a class with a particular teacher and, speaking up to ask a question. Or imagine yourself standing in front of the class giving a speech, and imagine the speech from start to finish. But again, as you imagine yourself doing it, imagine yourself being the version of you that you want to be. So you're standing in front of the room, your voice isn't shaking, your knees aren't shaking, and instead you're looking around the room, making eye contact, you have everything memorized, you're making really good points. People in the audience are kind of smiling and nodding as they're listening. Your teacher seems really interested. And so imagine the scenario in as much detail as possible, because that is a form of practice of dealing with these types of situations. So again, it's all about the mental rehearsal. Practice as much as you can. Take a couple of minutes before you fall asleep each night. Do it often throughout the day. and think of that as kind of your preparation for going back to school. All right. Next video will be about dealing with COVID-related anxiety that's coming up for some people with having to return to school. But I hope this video was helpful for some social anxiety folks. See you soon.